How's it going, Coffee Nation? In this video, I want to talk about armored units and why I think they are a missed opportunity in Fire Emblem Engage and to some degree in Fire Emblem in general. So let's spin into it. So what is going on with the armored class? Why do I feel like it's a missed opportunity? I feel like armor could have had more to it. I don't like that just general is the only armored class in the game. There is Great Knight, but it's not considered an armored, it's considered a cavalry. It just happens to have high defense. It's considered armored in terms of weakness, but not in terms of type. Now, why does that matter? It matters because the engage abilities factor in what your type is and give you different effects. And in the case of cavalry versus armored, you sometimes get different effects, and there aren't really that many armored types. And much like Chi Adept, it feels like armored was kind of given the short end of the stick, and they're just like, just put general in there and just forget about it. So I would prefer if there were more types of armored units, and I do have a few ideas as to what they could be. So outside of general, the other thing too is there's no like interesting abilities. It's just like this is a unit with low speed and high defense. Like that's all it does. I feel like general could have had some interesting abilities, and there could be different subclasses like general that have their stats changed a little bit so that you have more variety. I would say currently the passives on General and Great Knight are decent. I think they could be more interesting, and I feel like each class type should have more distinction. So in this case, I want to introduce this idea of stances that I'll get into in a few minutes. But switching places, this is good, but I feel like tank should have something that allows them to tank or absorb damage if that's the purpose of the unit type. Great Knight does achieve this with its passive. It's not the best passive, but taking 3 less damage is nice, and if you stack it with things like Gentility or Arm Shield, then you're looking at some substantial damage reduction, especially during enemy phase. So what would I do differently for armored units? I would give them stances. I would give each class type its own thing. So the game wants to distinguish the class types, at least in Engage. I don't know about mainline Fire Emblem titles, but at least in Engage, they've made these class types, and I think class types should be distinct. So for example, Coverts getting 60 avoid on avoid tiles that provide 30 avoid is a way to distinguish them from other units, but the distinguishing factors between like armored units and other units is that they just have slightly higher defense than them. And I don't even mean like that much higher. I mean like maybe like 10 points more of defense against like something like Wyverns or Halberdiers or Heroes or things like this. So it's not even like they're that much more tanky. And they also lose out on tanking because they have low res and they have low speed. So when they get hit by magic, they get doubled and they get hit really hard. So they're not even necessarily the best tanks in the game. They're just the best physical tanks in the game. And that's all they can necessarily tank. So I feel like they need more identity. So what I would do is introduce stances. So stances would be like an activated ability. So let's say, I ignore her weird build. It's just kind of a meme here. But let's say you're in combat and you activate the unit. There would be an option for stances, and the stance would have trade-offs. It would allow you to do one thing, like boost some stat or boost some defensive stat, but then it would reduce something else, or it can only be used, so like every 2 or 3 turns, so you can't spam it. So it'd be like a tactical timed ability, kind of like a cooldown in a way. So here are some examples of stances. You could have like shield stance. Unit does not counterattack for 1 turn, but takes 50% less damage. So that would be an example. So like their shield is up and they're not counterattacking, they're just tanking damage. So in this case, you wouldn't be enemy phasing at all, but you would just be tanking, like just straight up tanking. This is very much inspired by MMOs, like tank rolls and things like this. Then you could have something like solid stance. Unit takes 25% less damage and can counterattack for 25% more damage, but cannot move next turn. So essentially you're like rooting yourself for a single turn. So you tank more, you deal more damage, but then you can't move next turn. So then you're like stuck in place. There could be other downsides. There could be other functionality. And then I have another one, Reckless Stance. Unit takes 50% more damage, but deals 50% more damage. So there'd be different class types. So Shield Stance would be on General, Solid Stance would be on another armor class, Reckless Stance would be on another armor class. So you'd have 3 different armor classes. Right now, General has a shield, so this could just be like the main tank. But you could also have like a Shield Knight as an alternative, where it's just like it just has a massive shield, kind of like the old school RuneScape shield. that requires two hands to wield, so just be like just a tank. You could have a kind of tanky bruiser unit that would be able to fight a little bit better, have a little bit more speed, but still technically be a tank. That could have like solid stance, so it'd be more of like a bruiser tank. Currently, I feel like the actual armored class, armored, it's either one of two things in most Fire Emblem games. It's either so tanky that nothing hits it for any damage physically, and then it just like enemy phases physical exceptionally well, but then magic just destroys it. Or it's not high enough in defense, and enemies hit right through its defense, including like mages and other units. It like kind of exists within these two extremes, where it's either super tank or it's not tanky enough. And in this case, this Gold Mary at 37 defense. Let's actually check out some of these enemies' hit rates and damage. So she exists in the not tanky enough spectrum right now, where everything can hit her, everything can double her, and she's probably going to get killed by most things. And if she had higher defense, maybe if she had 50 plus defense, she would be in the too tanky side of things, where enemies actually won't attack you if they can't damage you. That's another problem with tanks in this game. That's actually why I prefer bruiser tanks, like Tamara, because she still has similar defense, like 32 defense. Enemies will attack her, but she has higher res and she won't get doubled because she's actually fast. So she can actually enemy phase like archers and mages safely, especially with Ike. And without Ike, she can relatively enemy phase them safely as well. So I would say currently tanks are suboptimal units, and they need more going on for them, at least in the metagame of no DLC engage. And even in like other Fire Emblem games, I always feel like tanks are kind of a meme. I'd rather just have murderers, like things that just kill everything, than some unit that can enemy phase kind of well. And there's usually mechanics that enable enemy phasing. Now you can run generals, but the fact that they change it so that when you take 0 damage, enemies don't attack you, that hurts armor. The fact that they're very slow hurts them. Magic always doubles them for the most part. Great Knight is really good, but it's considered a cavalry. It's like Great Knight is actually legitimately very strong. It has slightly less defense than General, but it has way more speed. It has more res. It has more mobility. I think it's just a superior class in general. So let's look at her on General for comparison. So she gains, this is all she gains. This is like a problem in my opinion. So going from Picket to General, she just gains 4 defense, that's it. That's not, and then to Great Knight, she gains 3, and she loses 5 speed. That's not really good. That's pretty bad. I think the armor needs to be better. I think it needs more mechanics, or maybe even just stat changes. I think that enemies attacking or not attacking when they hit for 0. Now that makes sense logically, but how would an enemy know it's not going to hurt you? You know, like, is it psychic? How does it know what your defense value is? I feel like that's like a game developer trying to put a band-aid on a problem. But like, if you think about it logically, it's like your opponent doesn't know how good you are at tanking. Like, they would still attack you. They would still attack what they think they could kill. You might want to prefer to attack something else that isn't an armored knight if they can kill something. But I feel like the AI kind of reads the situation too perfectly. Like, they have perfect information on all your stats, and you also have perfect information on all their stats. So it kind of removes the guessing or the randomness. So like, one aspect of Magic the Gathering is the unknown. Like, you don't know what's in your opponent's hand unless you can look at it from a card effect. So the fact that you and the enemies have mutual access to all of each other's position knowledge outside of Fog of War maps and your stats allows enemies to look at a thing and calculate, oh, I deal 0 damage, I'm not going to attack you. And I feel like Fire Emblem probably should have more unknown stuff in it if they're trying to go for this game. Like, if they don't want it to be super balanced, because they're kind of pushing in the direction away from super balance and game integrity. They're kind of pushing into crazy territory. So if they're going to push into crazy territory where you're allowing all these insane broken things and people like it and that's what people want, then you might as well start removing the ability to just see enemy stats. It's kind of silly how they can calculate, oh, I deal 0 damage, therefore I won't attack. That's kind of stupid, to be honest. If you translate that into real life, like, they wouldn't know they're not going to be able to hurt you. They would be like, oh, well, I might not be able to, but I could still attempt it. Like, there's still opportunity. So what are my ideas for the new classes? Like, what should they even be? Let's spin into it again. General would be the weapon master, like it was in previous games, where it just has 3 weapons. And then you'd have Shield Knight, which would be a knight with a shield. It could be like a 2-handed shield. It could just be like a shield and a weapon. And that could have shield stance. General could have solid stance. And then you would have what I just labeled as skirmisher. So it could be like a medium durability, similar to Great Knight, but with more speed and damage, higher res. So it'd be a 5-move land unit, but it'd be armor. Trades durability for damage and on a general tanky frame. So you'd have 3 armored class types. You'd have a super tank, you would have a weapon master, and you'd have a bruiser. And then armor would have stances to separate it from other things, and each armor class type would have stances. And I feel like that would be very interesting. I feel like that would add more to it. I think they should have minimum damage so that enemies will always attack the armor. So it could be like 1, it could be 2, it could be 3. I think it's stupid that you're basically punished by making something too tanky. It's like, this build is too effective. Now you're never going to enemy phase because nothing attacks you. So that just makes units like Gold Mary on Hero and Tamara on Picket better at tanking, because then they can get attacked and then counterattack and kill. So that's like my main argument against running armor in general, like running generals, is Tamara's defense is never going to get so high she doesn't get attacked. Her res is never going to get that high either. So I can guarantee she'll get attacked. And when I throw Ike on her, I can guarantee she'll counterattack as long as I don't get broken. So, and there are ways to set that up, equipping things, positioning, whatever. Panette, similarly, can enemy phase very well with the right build. And she will never get such high defense that she won't get attacked. Of the 2 of them, I feel like this is better at killing, and this is better at tanking more things. Because, look at the difference in res here. The difference in res and speed. Obviously, that Axe is not... Yeah, her speed is more like 18. So, but yeah, more speed. Better at killing. She still can kill consistently with the right build, but... Yeah, I think armor is missing a lot. It's just like Chi Adapt. It feels like an afterthought. There's a lot of subtlety and nuance between the classes. Even if they just had alternate classes that did different things, maybe General has access to all 3 of the weapons and can't be broken, and then you could have, Great Knight. Consider Great Knight an armor anyways, in my opinion. Just move it to armor anyways and give it some slightly different properties, and then maybe make a third thing that is either super tanky. So General would be a very tanky damage dealer that hits really hard once but has very high defense, and you could have a Shield Knight that's super tanky, even tankier than that, but has very low damage, so it can enemy phase for some damage, but it'd be chip damage, so it's more of just a main tank. I feel like that would be interesting, and that would be more within the framework without adding stances and everything. But that's pretty much it for this one. Definitely let me know what you think, if you agree or disagree. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy these discussion type videos, and I will see you in the next one.